Hey guys, Wayback Rewind here. Today I'm going to talk about Sony's DCR PC5. This camera came out in 2000. It's a Mini-DV camcorder. Normally I like for the camcorders to have some kind of a story, a reason for me to want to buy them. This camera came out in 2000 while I was in Japan, and I was fascinated by this camera because it was a miracle of miniaturization. Compared to other cameras of 2000, it was almost unbelievably small. Here we are 20 years later, I finally have one. Today I'm going to look at it, tell you all about it. Coming up next on Wayback Rewind. Okay, let's get started. The Sony DCR PC5, this camera was just incredibly small compared to other cameras of its time. So while I was in Japan in the year 2000, I actually took a tour of the Sony building, and the DCR PC5 was the new camera of the time. My katakana is a little rusty, but I believe this says mobile handycam. This camera was just so amazing in its abilities. Nothing like it existed up to that point, to be able to do all of these functions in such a small camera. So that's what I'm going to tell you about today. So this is one of the first cameras to have this type of format with the little fold down handle. They would all adopt this format. For the ones in this, I don't know what you call this. It's just like a large vertical brick where it's designed for you to work this with your thumb. Forefinger does the zoom. This became a very popular style in the early 2000s. It's not the most ergonomic design, and it didn't seem to last very long. The cameras kind of went back to your traditional camcorder design, and this vertical brick style didn't last very long. But the operations of this camera are very similar to what we've seen before. You have this rotary switch that goes between camera and play. You have this lockout, which goes into memory mode, which activates the photo mode. It uses the old school memory stick that can only store photos at 640 by 480. In the year 2000, that was considered state of the art. To be able to do digital stills on a camera. They were just beginning to be able to do digital stills. And later cameras would have higher resolution sensors to take higher resolution stills. This camera did not. The early 2000 cameras could only take stills at camcorder resolution, which was not really all that great. That being said, this is a touchscreen. A year 2000 touchscreen is pretty amazing. So when you go into playback mode, you see your familiar Sony playback controls on here. This doesn't have the more sophisticated software that you would see on their mid-2000 cameras, but it does have the play, stop, rewind, fast forward here. And instead of a menu, it just says function. And then you can pull up the menu. And this is kind of an unusual menu for a Sony. We're kind of used to seeing that little rotating cylinder. That came later. This was one of the first touch screen menu-driven camcorders, but it has all of the usual things you would expect to see on a Mini-DV camcorder. This is the playback menu, so I'm getting playback type things. If I go into record and hit menu, I'm going to see the record type things. I've got it set to 16:9. It does do a widescreen, although it's not really a native widescreen. It just crops. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, it is cropping. Is taking off the top and the bottom of the screen to create a 16:9 aspect ratio, and it loses quality in the process. But it does kind of future-proof your video so that when you later expand it, it's the proper aspect ratio to show on a widescreen. So that being said, you can come in here and you can adjust the digital zoom, night shot. You do have some pretty good manual controls in here. You got your typical 90s, early 2000 digital effects, negative art, sepia, black and white, solarized, pastel, mosaic. We can turn all that off. Back out of there. Program modes here. We're auto, or I can go into spotlight, portrait, sports, beach, sunset, landscape, low light. I can come back into auto. So in addition to the main menu, you can call up some of the more common things down here, like exposure. You can do manual exposure. It has a plus minus. You can't really see exactly what it's doing, but you do have a plus minus for exposure. It has a spot meter where you can put a square around the things you want exposed properly. You can call up your digital effects directly from this screen. It has 3 pages. This camera's real claim to fame is how small it is. Something that you can barely grip it without this extension here, and yet they still managed to squeeze in a full-size old school memory stick, and hiding up under here is an S-video, and then under here I have a microphone, an audio video input, a LANC, which can also be used as a digital I/O for serial port, precursor to USB. You could plug in here and you could plug into the serial port on your computer. And then there is the FireWire IEEE 1394. So a lot of connections for a camera this size. To eject it, I just realized not too long ago that they expect you to do it this way. Your Mini-DV tape, of course. But this is how Sony expects you to do it. Lay it down on its side like that. Let it go in and then close it up. It also has a viewfinder, color, which is something that you rarely see on any type of camera these days. When you open this, of course, the viewfinder shuts off. Night shot, super night shot, and then the photo mode, as I described earlier. A very high featured camera for 2000. Compare this to my TRV 510, which is, I bought this in '99, so these two cameras are very similar in age. And just look at the difference. This is Digital 8, this is Mini-DV. Electrically, they're almost identical. This camera is like 3 times the size of this one. So this is the camera I took to Japan with me. This is the camera I admired when I was in Japan. And it took 20 years for these two things to come together and be in the same place at the same time. Other than that, it's just your typical standard definition Mini-DV camcorder. Nothing super exciting about it. It does have a focus ring here. If you set it to manual focus, you can use that. But this digital program editing gives you some kind of a limited ability to create a timeline up to 20 scenes, I believe, and then mark the in and out of those 20 scenes. You can delete scenes, rearrange them, and then as you're playing it back, it will automatically control your recording device. If it's a FireWire device, it can actually do a pretty accurate edit. If it's a regular VCR, you have to train it and time how long it takes for that machine to get started, and can do a slightly less accurate edit. I just want to compare this to the Micro MV camera. It's just a tiny bit smaller, even though the tape is quite a bit smaller. This was pretty amazing for a Mini-DV camcorder of the year 2000 compared to what I was still using in the year 2000. So there you have it. The DCR PC5, Sony's tiny camera from the year 2000 here in the year 2023. And as always, like or subscribe to my channel, and thanks for watching.